I never thought I'd be the one questioning my sanity in the sleepy farming town of Oak Glen. Name's Austin Harlan, local vet for the past 15 years, tending everything from colicky cows to feisty barn cats. Life here was predictable. Sunrise chores, sunset beers, and the occasional tall tale around the fire pit. The air carried an earthy scent of turned soil and hay, mixed with the faint tang of manure you got used to over time. The hollow nestled between rolling hills, where mist clung to valleys like a shroud in the early mornings, and stars punched through the night sky, unhindered by city lights. It was a place where folks knew each other's business. A handshake sealed deals, and the rhythm of the seasons dictated our days. But lately, things have gotten off. It started subtly, like a murmur you can't quite place, a shiver down your spine on a warm day. My rounds began with the usual complaints, minor ailments and routine checkups I'd heard 100 times before. But then, old man Hargrove called me out to his place one crisp autumn morning. The Hargrove farm sat on the outskirts, a weathered spread of barns and pens that had seen better days. Hargrove was waiting by the pigsty, his face etched with lines deeper than usual, his overalls stained with mud. He swore his pigs were staring at him funny, not oinking like they should, just standing there in eerie silence, eyes locked on him as if sizing him up. I chuckled at first, figuring it was the old coot's imagination running wild after too many lonely nights. But when I approached the pen, the pigs, all 12 of them, turned their heads in perfect unison, their beady eyes reflecting an unnatural gleam under the overcast sky. No snorts, no rooting in the mud, just that silent, unwavering stare. It sent a chill through me, like they were peering into my soul, judging me. I shook it off, administered some vitamins, and told Hargrove to lay off the whiskey. But as I drove away, glancing in the rearview mirror, I could swear those pigs were still watching, their forms silhouetted against the fading light. It didn't stop there. A few days later, Widow Ellis flagged me down on the dirt road to her modest coop. She was a frail woman in her 70s, hands gnarled from years of gathering eggs and tending gardens. Her voice trembled as she described her chickens clustering in perfect formations at dawn, pecking the ground in deliberate patterns as if drawing maps. I humored her, suspecting a fox had spooked them into odd behavior. But when I saw it myself the next morning, the sun barely cresting the hills, my skepticism cracked. Dozens of hens, arranged in precise circles and lines, their beaks tapping the earth in rhythmic unison, etching crude symbols, arrows, spirals, shapes that didn't belong in mere chicken scratch. The air hung unnaturally still, with no clucking or fluttering, just the soft patter of beaks on dirt. A prickle rose at the back of my neck, as if the patterns were a message meant for me, one I couldn't decipher. I scattered feed to break them up, but they reformed almost immediately, their eyes flicking toward me with a knowing glint. And the cows, God, the cows, they were the worst. I'd visit farms for routine vaccinations, pulling up in my old pickup with its rattling toolbox in the back. The herds grazed peacefully at first, but as I approached with my syringe kit, they'd turn their heads in unison, watching me with an unnatural gleam, like they knew something I didn't. Their massive bodies shifted slightly, forming a loose semicircle around me, their breaths coming in synchronized huffs that fogged the air. It wasn't aggression, not yet, just an eerie awareness that made my skin crawl. I'd hurry through the injections, feeling their eyes boring into me, then drive off with my heart racing. At night, alone in my small cabin on the edge of town, I'd swear I heard faint whispers in my head. Not voices exactly, but urges, fragments of thought that weren't mine. Join us, or watch. They slithered into my dreams, jolting me awake in a cold sweat, the room heavy with the scent of damp earth and something metallic, like blood. I laughed it off at first. Superstition, exhaustion from long days, maybe even that dodgy moonshine from the county fair. The other farmers did too. We were practical folk. Animals don't get smart overnight. We'd gather at the local diner, the air thick with coffee and grease, swapping stories and dismissing the oddities as coincidences. But deep down, a seed of doubt took root, watered by those sleepless nights. That is, until Pete Ramirez vanished. Good guy, ran the feed store on Main Street, always quick with a joke and a discount for regulars. He was a fixture in Oak Glen, with his easy smile and stories of his days in the city before settling here for a quieter life. One foggy morning, I swung by his place to pick up supplies. His truck was idling in the driveway, engine humming softly, door open, coffee still steaming in the cup holder, sending lazy curls of vapor into the chill air. But no Pete, I called out, my voice bouncing off the nearby barns, but only silence answered. No tracks in the dew-kissed grass, no note on the dash, just his weathered hat on the ground near the pig pen, crumpled like it had been dropped in haste. And those damn pigs watching silently from the shadows, their eyes glowing faintly in the dim light, as if they were guardians of some dark secret. I searched the property, my boots squelching in the mud, heart pounding with growing unease. The sheriff poked around later that day, a burly man named Tom Wilkins with a mustache that hid his perpetual frown. He muttered about runaways or accidents. Maybe Pete had wandered off disoriented or fallen into the nearby ravine. But we all felt it, a creeping dread settling over the hollow like fog rolling in from the river, thick and suffocating. Folks started locking their doors at night, casting weary glances at their livestock. The whispers grew louder in my dreams, twisting into nightmares where animals spoke in human tongues, their words laced with accusation. I started avoiding the barns after dark, telling myself it was nothing, just paranoia fueled by Pete's disappearance. But the town felt different now. Shadows longer, silences deeper, the wind carrying faint, unsettling moans that could have been the creak of old wood or something more sinister. The days blurred into a tense routine. I'd make my calls under the watchful eyes of the animals, feeling increasingly isolated. One evening, as the sun dipped below the hills, painting the sky in bloody hues, I visited the Jenkins farm. Their sheep huddled in tight groups, not scattering when I approached, but turning as one to face me. Their wool seemed matted with something dark, and their bleats sounded almost like murmurs, mirroring the ones in my head. I fled earlier than usual, the drive home filling with gnawing anxiety. That night, I sat on my porch, shotgun across my lap, staring into the darkness. The stars were hidden by clouds, and the only light came from my lantern's faint glow, casting flickering shadows that danced like specters. I tried to convince myself it was all in my mind. The loss of my wife, Isabella, 5 years ago in that car accident on slick roads after a storm. I'd relived it 1,000 times. The screech of tires, the shattering glass, her final gasp. Maybe grief was finally breaking me. But the whispers persisted, pulling me toward something I couldn't name. Then came the night. Everything flipped. I was finishing up at the clinic, the small building on the edge of town reeking of antiseptics and animal fur. The clock ticked past midnight as I locked up, keys jingling in my trembling hands, when the screams began. Distant cries from the hills at first, then erupting everywhere, piercing the night like shards of glass. Human cries of terror mingled with unnatural howls and snarls no farm animals should make. My blood ran cold. I grabbed my shotgun from the truck, its metal cool and reassuring, and sprinted toward the Miller farm, the closest source of chaos. My boots pounded the gravel road, breath ragged, heart thumping like a war drum. The air thickened with the metallic tang of blood and an acrid scent like burning chemicals. As I crested the hill, the horror unfolded. The animals had changed. Pigs with elongated snouts and glowing eyes, their bodies twisted into lean, muscular forms, charged like wolves through the fields, hooves tearing up the earth. They moved with predatory grace, not the clumsy waddle I knew, their eyes reflecting moonlight in eerie red hues. Cows stampeded not in panic, but with purpose, their massive forms herding folks toward the old silos, towering structures of rusted metal looming like sentinels. Their hides rippled with unnatural veins, pulsing as if alive with inner fire, and their lowing formed a coordinated rumble that shook the ground. Chickens swarmed in clouds, feathers matted and sharp-edged, pecking with razor precision as they dove like falcons to tear at flesh. They weren't just animals anymore. They were predators, and we were the prey. I saw old man Hargrove dragged into a makeshift pen, twisted rebar woven with sun-bleached bones into a grotesque enclosure. His eyes wide with terror as invisible forces battered his mind. He clawed at the air, screaming about visions, reliving his worst memories, just as I began to feel it too. Hallucinations, they called them later. But I felt it surge through me like poison, visions of my worst fears, reliving the accident that took my wife years ago, over and over. The crunch of metal, Isabella's bloodied face, her eyes pleading as life ebbed away. It played in my mind's eye, vivid and unrelenting, until I wanted to scream, to claw out my own thoughts. I staggered, shotgun slipping from my grasp, but forced myself to focus, firing blindly into the swarm. The blast scattered mutated goats with horns curved like scythes, their bleats turning to guttural roars. Chaos reigned, neighbors I'd known all my life fleeing or falling, their cries cut short by slashing claws or crushing hooves. The air reeked of fear and slaughter, the ground slick with blood under the merciless moon. I don't know how I survived that initial onslaught, blind luck maybe, or the adrenaline propelling me through the fields, dodging herding cows and swarming birds. Amid the pandemonium, I linked up with a few others. Valeria Jenkins, the schoolteacher with her sharp mind and knack for puzzles, her dress torn and face streaked with dirt. Young Timmy Hale, a farmhand barely out of his teens, clutching a pitchfork like a lifeline. And grizzled old Martha from the general store, her eyes fierce despite the terror. We fought our way to the abandoned mill on the river's edge, a crumbling relic from the town's lumber days, its walls overgrown with ivy and creeping shadows. We barricaded the doors with rusted machinery and broken beams, the wood groaning under the assault of pounding hooves and scratching claws outside. Panting, we huddled in the dim interior, the air musty with decay and the faint drip of water from the leaky roof. Most of the town didn't make it. Friends, families, torn apart in the frenzy. But a few of us did. Me, the doubting vet who finally believed, Valeria piecing together fragments of what we'd seen, and that handful of others, our faces etched with shock and determination. We dodged their patrols in the days that followed, those mutated beasts moving in packs with chilling intelligence, as if communicating telepathically. It had to be. We'd peek through cracks in the mill's walls, watching them prowl the misty fields at dawn, their forms silhouetted against the rising sun. Pigs led reconnaissance, sniffing the air with elongated snouts. Cows formed blockades on the roads, eyes scanning with mechanical precision. Chickens acted as scouts, fluttering silently overhead. The town was theirs now, a ghost of its former self, with abandoned homes creaking in the wind and bloodstains darkening the earth. We rationed scavenged food, canned goods from the mill's forgotten storage, water from the river filtered through cloth, and shared stories in hushed tones to keep madness at bay. Valeria, with her history background from teaching at the one-room schoolhouse, dug into old records we'd grabbed during a risky foray into the town hall. Her hands trembled as she pored over yellowed documents by lantern light, the flame casting dancing shadows that made us jump at every flicker. Piecing together clues from those records and soil samples I collected during a daring midnight raid, crouching in the fields under cover of darkness, the earth cold and clammy under my fingers, we traced it back. A hidden chemical spill from the defunct factory upriver, abandoned since the 70s, its toxins seeping into the groundwater for decades. Or perhaps something older, a curse buried in the land since the settlers' days, tales of ancient rituals performed by desperate pioneers to ensure bountiful harvests, binding their fates to the beasts they tamed. Either way, it twisted the animals, blurring the lines between beast and something more, infusing them with intelligence, rage, and a telepathic link that bound them into a hive. The soil samples glowed faintly under UV light from my vet kit, confirming unnatural contamination, a mutagen accelerating evolution in horrifying ways. We debated theories late into the night, our voices low to avoid attention, the mill's walls seeming to close in with every hour. Tension built like a storm, tempers fraying as hunger and fear gnawed at us. Timmy cracked first, sobbing about his lost family, while Martha sharpened knives with grim resolve. Valeria and I grew close in those dark hours, her puzzles providing a fragile anchor, mapping patrol patterns, hypothesizing weaknesses. We couldn't hide forever. The patrols grew bolder, sniffing at the mill's perimeter, their thoughts probing our minds like icy fingers, planting seeds of doubt and despair. Last night, under a moonless sky heavy with impending rain, we snuck into their lair, a cavernous barn on the outskirts, once owned by the Millers but now warped into a nightmare lab. We moved silently through the tall grass, hearts hammering, the air thick with the musky scent of mutated flesh and decay. The barn loomed ahead, its wooden sides bulging unnaturally, as if swollen from within. Vines of twisted bone and sinew creeping up the walls like veins. Inside, the horror unfolded. Cages of hybrid abominations, experiments fusing animal instinct with stolen human thought. Grotesque things turned my stomach. Pigs with human-like hands grafted onto their forelimbs, grasping at bars with desperate intelligence. Chickens with elongated necks and eyes that wept blood, clucking in fragmented words. Cows fused into multi-limbed behemoths, their hides etched with symbols mirroring those pecked by Ellis's hens. The air reeked of formaldehyde and rot, dim lights from bioluminescent growths casting a sickly green glow. We crept through the shadows, witnessing creatures that eroded what it means to be human, begging for death in telepathic pleas, their minds a cacophony of pain and stolen memories. At the center loomed the Alpha, a colossal abomination, part bull, part nightmare. Its body a hulking mass of muscle and horn, eyes burning with infernal light. It stood in a central chamber, surrounded by pulsating pods that hummed with energy, perhaps the source of the mutation. Its mind slammed into ours like a tidal wave, a psychic assault that buckled my knees and revealed a vendetta that chilled me to the bone. Humanity's crimes against them. It broadcast cages, slaughter, endless exploitation, generations of suffering distilled into raw fury. Images flooded my thoughts. Veal calves in crates, battery hens in endless rows, the abattoir's bloody floors. Now, it was their turn to harvest, to turn the tables in a grotesque reversal. The Alpha's presence overwhelmed us, its thoughts a roar that drowned out our own, forcing visions of subjugation, us as the caged, the experimented upon. It cornered us in that hellish chamber, the air vibrating with its power, forcing a choice. Destroy the mutation's source, a glowing core pulsing like a heart at the Alpha's feet, risking our minds to the psychic backlash that could shatter us. Or submit as eternal subjects in their twisted experiments. I raised my makeshift weapon, a jury-rigged flamethrower from scavenged parts, its nozzle trembling in my grip. As Valeria whispered a plan beside me, her voice steadied despite the fear in her eyes. We could overload the core with a chemical from my vet kit, but it meant getting close and enduring the mental onslaught. Timmy and Martha flanked us, weapons ready, their faces pale with resolve. But then, the Alpha's voice boomed in my head, a thunderous rumble rattling my bones.
Escape is an illusion, Austin. You've been one of us all along.
And that's when I felt it. A strange itch in my thoughts. A whisper turning into a roar. Memories surfacing that weren't mine. The feel of grass under hooves. The sting of a branding iron. the cold finality of the slaughterhouse. My hands, were they changing? Fingers elongated subtly, nails hardening into claws. The whispers I'd heard all along weren't external. They were me, awakening. Valeria's eyes widened in horror as I turned to her, the roar building, consuming. The roar inside me crescendoed, drowning out Valeria's desperate pleas, Timmy's screams, Martha's futile swings with her knife. My vision blurred as fur bristled along my arms, bones cracking and reforming into something primal and hungry. The Alpha's presence flooded me, not as an invader, but as a missing piece slotting into place. Those whispers I dismissed as madness, as grief-fueled hallucinations from losing Isabella, weren't signals from the outside. They were me, buried deep, awakened by the chemical spill or ancient curse lurking in my blood, passed down through generations of Harlan vets tending these lands, unknowingly ingesting the tainted soil and water, becoming vectors for the change. I lunged, not at the Alpha, but at Valeria. My claws, now hooves, rending fabric and flesh, her eyes locked on mine in betrayal as the psychic link bound us all. Join us, I thought, the words broadcasting from my mind like those that had haunted my nights. Now a command. The core pulsed brighter, the mutations spreading unchecked as I tore into my former allies. The Alpha watched us with approval, its vendetta complete. We weren't destroying it. I was the source, the doubting vet who'd carried the seed from farm to farm, vaccine to vaccine, whispering the infection into every beast I'd touched. In the end, escape was an illusion. The hollow fell silent under a shroud of mist. The animals reigned eternal, and I, part man, part monster, roamed the pens of human remnants. My sanity not lost, but transformed. The whispers had been right all along. I was never questioning my own mind. I was finally listening to it. And in that sleepy farming town, the harvest continues, with me as the reaper. Sometimes, in the quiet hours before dawn, I catch glimpses of my old self in the reflective pools of blood that dot the fields. Dr. Harlan, the healer, the fool who thought he could outrun his heritage. But those moments fade like mist under the sun, replaced by the eternal hunger that binds me to this land. The Alpha, it's gone, absorbed into me. Or perhaps it always was me, the true progenitor of the curse. Valeria, Timmy, Martha, they roam with me now, twisted remnants of their former selves, our psychic chorus a lullaby for the damned. The town speaks of ghosts in the hollow, but they don't know the truth. We're not ghosts. We're the future, evolving, devouring. As the first light breaks, I howl to the rising sun, a promise to the world beyond our borders. The infection spreads not through bites or scratches, but through stories told by survivors, fleeing farmers and wide-eyed travelers carrying the seed in their veins and minds. I was never the victim. I was the vector. Now, with every retold tale, the harvest extends far beyond this sleepy town. Come visit, if you dare. The whispers await you, too.